The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Today on Aging Horizons, we'll be speaking with Susan Gobbs. She's the contract attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services. We're going to be talking all about estate planning and what you need to be thinking about in the new year, what documents you should take a look at, and how to get access to services, and what to make sure you don't do as you look at those documents in the new year. So make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare summary notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
Receiving help for Ella has been life-changing, and the best word for it is relief. I was the therapist, I was the aide, and I couldn't be the mom because emotionally you're just to your wits' end, you're trying to survive.
I provide care for the Harrises, specifically their daughter Ella. Respite care is extremely challenging, but the rewards that you receive from it are 100 times more than working with a child that doesn't have special needs. Once they get something, it's everything. It's a you celebrate. You don't just enjoy those moments. You celebrate every moment that you get, that you guided them to that next step.
Respite. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. Will you provide it? Call 800-224-6034 or visit respite.mt.gov.
It went from survival to enjoying life and being able to be a mom again.
Brought to you by the Montana Broadcasters and this station.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host today, Katie Lovell, and today we're speaking with Susan Gobbs, who's a contract attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services. Susan, thank you for joining us.
It's always a pleasure.
So, Susan, it's the new year. Lots of people are looking at their life, making new resolutions, trying new things. What are some things we need to look at in the legal realm of things for the new year?
Well, when we're talking about estate planning, I think a lot of people put it off. It's a really hard thing to confront your own mortality, to decide what you're going to do with your stuff. And so consequently, do you even have estate planning documents? If you don't, this is a really good time to arrange to get that done, which could be done through our office at the Legal Services Developer Program or through a private attorney. I would advise people not to do this on their own. There are many missteps that can take place, and it can cause some real disastrous results if you try to do estate planning on your own.
Not a great self-help program.
Not really. So at a minimum, everybody who's 18 and older should have a power of attorney for financial. They should have a power of attorney for healthcare decisions. If they have children, particularly if they have children who are minors, they should have a will. Depending on what kind of assets they have, they may or may not need a will at this time.
Okay.
If they are concerned about how their final illness is going to be handled, perhaps a living will or a living will appointment.
Okay.
Each of those documents have a specific purpose. You don't need all of them perhaps, but you definitely need some of them.
Let's start with the powers of attorney. Why is that something that someone should look at, maybe even as a first document when they're looking at estate planning?
Well, we often think about powers of attorney for people who are old and who perhaps have dementia and they need somebody to make their decisions. If you're a younger individual, you could be in a car wreck. You could be unconscious. And if you're unconscious, you cannot make the decisions that may need to be made. What if you need surgery? Who has the authority to tell the doctors that they consent to this surgery? If you're impaired for any length of time, who has the ability to handle your bank accounts? If you got hit by someone else, who's going to be dealing with the insurance company? And perhaps even a lawsuit relating to that particular injury.
Sure.
So there are lots of reasons to do this. The minute you turn 18, those I think are very important, but we again don't like to think about the possibility that anything can happen to us. I also think that a lot of young families don't think wills are important because they don't have anything.
Sure.
But if they have children, it's very important, particularly if something happens to both mom and dad, to make arrangements for who is going to care for those children and who may have to care for the assets that are left to those children.
Sure.
So that again is a very important thing that younger individuals need to think about. When we get older, we start to take this more seriously, and then we start thinking more about wills and living wills and that sort of thing, because again we start seeing our family members and friends pass away, and then we realize that perhaps it's important to get these documents done before you wait too long.
Perhaps we're not immortal.
Perhaps not. Perhaps not.
One of the things I hear a lot of people say is, I don't need to do powers of attorney because I'm married and my spouse will just take care of all of that.
Right.
Is that true?
Well, it is true to a certain extent. A power of attorney gives them a different level of power. And sometimes your spouse is not the best person to make those decisions. We've had instances where couples come in and one person has dementia and they know that that person's impaired, but the natural reaction of their spouse is to say, well, I'm going to appoint them my agent. No, you can't appoint somebody who can't make appropriate decisions on their own behalf for you.
Sure.
So it's always a good safety measure. And again, marriages can come, they can go. Your spouse may have a different attitude about medical care.
Sure.
One that perhaps doesn't mirror your own. Sometimes we have spouses who want to keep someone alive no matter the cost. That may not be what you yourself would like.
Sure.
You sometimes have spouses who will, as I like to say, pull the plug when I'm just taking a shallow breath. So you want to have somebody who you trust implicitly to make the decisions that you yourself would make.
Sure. So even if you do want to name a spouse, let's talk about a secondary agent. Why is that so important?
Well, again, things can happen to two people at the same time. A car wreck, you might both be impaired.
Sure.
If you name a secondary, it could be that you don't need to revamp your documents as frequently. Because if your spouse has passed away, you've already taken care of what happens if they're unable to act.
Sure.
Then you've got your second person. It could be a friend, it could be a child, it could be more than one child, although I don't like to have joint agents, and I certainly don't want it where all the kids, all 7 of them, will have to make a decision and agree to the decision. But it's important to just think about who it is that you trust. And we have seen occasions where I'm going to appoint my son John as my personal representative or for my agent under my power of attorney for financial. Is he good with money? Oh, hell no. His sister Mary is an accountant.
Sure.
So perhaps Mary is the more appropriate person to handle the finances. So it doesn't have to be birth order. It doesn't have to be a male heir. It can be anybody. And they also don't have to be geographically located close to you.
Sure.
With the internet, with internet banking, with healthcare being done a lot of times over Zoom, they can make decisions and not have to be right here.
Awesome. When we come back, we're going to talk about a few more of those documents, so stay tuned.
With as many as 1 in 10 Americans at risk for Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, chances are someone you know and love will receive that diagnosis. When that happens, You may well feel devastated, but know that you are not alone. Help is available. You don't have to face dementia by yourself. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
It's been 27 years. I never thought I'd still be smoking, but here I am, COPD and all. I'm about to have a granddaughter. There's so much to show her, but I'm scared I won't be able to keep up like I used to. I kind of gave up on myself on quitting. But it's different now. I want to be here for her and for my daughter.
Every generation produces heroes, men and women who step forward to defend our country in time of need, no matter the personal cost to themselves. And though we can never fully repay them, we can make sure they have access to low-cost, long-term care when they need it. That's what Montana's Veterans Homes are all about. If you've got a hero in need in your family, call us. We can help.
This is Sergeant Jones. Please respond. I was separated from my squad. Requesting backup. Anyone? Please respond. I'm all alone here.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. We're speaking with Susan Gobbs, who's a contract attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services, all about estate planning. So Susan, we talked about those powers of attorneys, we talked about naming a secondary agent. Let's talk a little bit about a will. So I'm young, I don't need a will, right?
You have 3 small children. You most certainly do need a will. Anybody, again, that has a child under the age of 18 needs a will. Because, again, you need to determine who would be your preferred custodian if something happened to you and your husband both. You need to determine who the person is that might handle that money. Now, the person who might be the best person to take care of your children might not be good with money. You might want to appoint somebody else to handle the assets for those children. So we don't like to think about it, but you can avoid what would be a very painful legal fight if you make your determination about who should be the guardian of your children. And I think sometimes it's real hard because you think it has to be a family member.
Sure.
Maybe you have a close friend whose parenting style mimics your own, and therefore that person is somebody that you trust. Now, I want to emphasize, in all of these situations, you need to talk to this person that you're going to appoint as your agent, or appoint as guardian of your children, or appoint as personal representative of your estate. It's not a good surprise if somebody passes away and all of a sudden somebody finds out they've got a lot of responsibility they weren't consulted about.
Well, I think I'll need to find a zookeeper then, since I have 3 boys.
Well, yes, they are active little boys, and you may find it hard to find a custodian. No, you won't. They're lovely. But I think that's just a really important thing to think about. And it's really important to have these conversations. Yeah. The person that you appoint in any capacity, agent, custodian, personal representative, has to be somebody you implicitly trust, somebody that you would trust with your car keys or your wallet, or making the decisions about your health care.
Sure.
So you want to have somebody who's on the same page, somebody that you think will not use your assets to benefit themselves. And I hate to say this, but we see this all the time in our office, where a family member thinks they're entitled to their inheritance and they don't necessarily want to wait till someone's dead.
Once you've done these documents, you're done. You never have to look at them again, right?
Not necessarily. I advise at least reviewing them every 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
Part of that is because the people you may have named may have passed away. Sure. They may no longer be in your life. If someone moves or changes their phone number, it is not necessary to draft new documents. And I'm going to repeat this in all cap letters. Do not write on your documents.
Sure.
Do not insert a new phone number. Do not insert a new address. What you want to do is write the new address and write the new phone number down and put it with your documents, but do not write on your current documents. And it's also important to review because you may not have the assets that you had 5 years ago. You may have sold the house. You may not have the vehicles. There may be some significant changes. And I always refer to a will as an optimistic document. I have these things. I want to give them to you. You may not have those things 20 years down the road.
Sure.
So it's important to just review periodically your will. It's very important not to write on your will. It is possible to do a codicil on a will. Because of the nature of the wills that we prepare in our office, I advise a complete new will.
Sure.
Codicils will sometimes, particularly if you're trying to do this yourself, you will put in language that's completely contrary to the rest of your will, and that can make things very difficult.
So just for simplicity's sake, look at maybe drafting a new document then. Absolutely. In another training that I've given, we talk about the 5D. So a divorce, a decade, a decline in a mental or a physical condition, a death of your agent or someone close to you, and then any new diagnosis. So if you have cancer or anything like that, good times to look at your documents.
I think it's always a good time to look at your document. And on the diagnosis part, we know that a significant amount of people in Montana who have Alzheimer's or another dementia do not get that diagnosis.
Sure.
So again, the decline in health would be what you would be looking at. I spoke to someone this morning. Family member has had a decline in health.
Yeah.
They are now going to go see a lawyer tomorrow because they need to do some changes to the will, which is well over 30 years old.
Oh, and it's become much more urgent now. So that's what some of this pre-planning can really help you avoid.
Right, and it's very important not to wait until somebody starts to decline. We oftentimes will see things where people never had documents. They never had powers of attorney. They never had a will. And they may have waited too long. Because, again, if somebody's going to sign a power of attorney, they need to know what the document is. They need to know what powers the document is granting. They need to have their wits about them. And if they do not, then we're potentially looking at a guardianship.
And something much more complicated and costly and sometimes traumatic, too.
Right, right.
Yeah. So, Susan, when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about some other situations in which you might want to look at your documents. Things may have changed in the law. And then what do we do with our documents once we've drafted them? And then again, I think we'll need to remind people not to write on their documents. So make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons. We're going to go over some of the other situations in which you might have an estate planning need that you hadn't thought of before. The birth of a new baby, things like that. So make sure that we get all those checked off the list, and then we're going to tell you what to do with those documents, including not writing on them one more time. So stay tuned.
Can you say ombudsman?
Ombudsman. Ombudsman?
Uma Doodlesman? Fortunately, you don't have to say it right to get the help of a long-term care ombudsman. If you or a loved one reside in assisted living or long-term care, an ombudsman can help resolve any issue. And these services are completely free and confidential. Now, why don't you try that again?
Ombudsman.
A decade of Montana fourth graders on Energy Share. Robbie Holman reminds us that even during the chilliest Montana winters, our homes don't have to be cold, not if we Energy Share the love. And Emma Bergman knows who to call when the cost of heating your home starts to put a chill on your family. Emma says, when winter is in the air, it's time to care with Energy Share. Energy Share is not a government program. It's neighbors helping neighbors who face energy emergencies the Montana way. Call or visit our website today. Thanks, Energy Share, for helping people in need.
I was diagnosed with diabetes in 1992, and I went into denial. It made me angry. I was a professional chef, and I didn't want to change my eating style. It took me a long time to get serious about managing my health. My perspective changed from resentment to one of loving my body, the container for my spirit. Getting help from my diabetes educator supported my goals of improved self-care. I want to feel good and have a great life. My diabetes educator helps me do this.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are. Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we've been speaking with Susan Gobbs, who's a contract attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services, all about estate planning. So Susan, we talked about, the 5 Ds, when you might look at addressing your documents, but there's a few other times that you might want to look at them,
right,
especially with that healthcare power of attorney.
Right. Again, you may change your mind as to how you want your healthcare decisions to be handled. There is something called HIPAA, which is the Health Information Protection, I don't remember the rest of the acronym, Act. But basically, without a HIPAA provision in your power of attorney, your agent cannot look at your healthcare records. Sure. And that is a very important thing for them to be able to do. So you want to be aware. We haven't had any major changes in probate law in Montana that would affect wills for quite some time. We have had some changes that affect probate, but wills themselves, no. But if anytime you are under the understanding there's something major, like you said, a birth of a new child, this is a situation that Kobe Bryant's estate found. When they had done their estate planning, they had not yet had their last child. Oh, sure. And his widow had to go to court and ask that that youngest child be treated in the same manner as the rest of Kobe's children, and that was accomplished. But I cannot imagine with a multi-million-dollar estate, perhaps billion-dollar estate, how expensive it was for them to do this, and it was a simple drafting error where it didn't say any afterborn children.
Sure.
And I know our participants in our wills clinic always giggle because they're 75 or 80 and it says, and any children I may have after this. And they always laugh, and I said, it's necessary to do this. If you've inherited stuff from your parents,
sure,
it may be necessary to talk about what items you want passed down to your children. We see a lot of what we refer to as blended families in our practice, meaning you have children from a marriage, your spouse has children from a marriage, you may have children together. You have to come to some real, decisions about how those various children are going to be handled. And your will does not have to be the same as your spouse's. It's usually best if it is, but we've seen situations where the husband wanted to treat situations differently than the wife.
Sure.
So I think those are very important. So anytime you gain a lot of money, gain a family member, remarry, do any of that sort of stuff, it's time to look at those wills again.
Absolutely. And another situation that we see sometimes is adopting grandchildren, which can be super important to relook at your estate plan.
Right. Yeah.
So once we've done our documents, we did all of our homework, we did our documents, we talked to the people that are involved, what do we do with them?
Well, you don't put them in a safety deposit box unless somebody else is on that box. Okay. Because when you die, your safety deposit box at the bank or the credit union gets sealed. And you have to get a court order to drill that lock out to get into the safety deposit box. I advise people to put it in the safest place in their home.
Sure.
Some people have a safe. A lot of people in Montana have a gun safe.
Sure.
But you, again, need to let the people that are your heirs know how to get to it. But again, only the people that you trust. If you have a child that you don't necessarily trust, you don't give them that combination. You also are not entitled to your parents' wills prior to their death. I have seen situations where family members have demanded, Mom, I want a copy of your will. It's within Mom's choice as to whether or not you get a copy of her will.
Sure.
Nobody's entitled to it, with the possible exception of the person she wants as her personal representative,
sure,
prior to her death. So again, I think it's real important not to be bullied by family members, not to be in a situation where you listen to what they have to say about their wants and needs. These documents are personal to you, and you do what's best for you.
Absolutely. And then, once again, what
Don't
are we
write
never
on
going to
them.
do? We're
Never going to write on those documents. You can write on separate pieces of paper. We provide in our program what we refer to as a tangible personal property list.
Sure.
And that's where you put grandmother's pearls. That's where you put great Aunt Sadie's gravy ladle. Things that are of sentimental value that you have that you want to go to specific people. That's the one piece of paper that you can write on. You can cross items off if you've sold them or given them away. You can add more items to it. That is the only document that I have no problem with people writing on.
But I could do that to my mom's, right? I can go in and write which
You know,
jewelry pieces I want.
You can't, and I have personal knowledge of people who have done that. And this document needs to be in the person's own handwriting, the person who owns the items.
So it's a really great way to make sure that those sentimental items that might change, that you may no longer have at the time of your death, get addressed without having to redo your documents.
Correct.
So Susan, the documents that we talked about, again, the most important ones, powers of attorney, and then the will. There are probably other documents that folks might want to look into.
Right, living wills. A lot of people have trusts. Now, trusts aren't as common in Montana as wills are. And if you want a trust, there are certain situations where a trust would make sense. You have a disabled child who's on public benefits. You have substantial assets. You have certain things that you want to not to be part of your estate for purposes of establishing public benefits eligibility. So the bottom line is our program is a program for people who need a simple, uncomplicated estate planning process. Absolutely. You need something more than that. We're more than happy to refer you to lawyers who work in this arena. And please do not get something off the internet. Do not go to go to Zoom. What is it? LegalZoom. Don't go to LegalZoom.com. Please do not do that. There are free resources available that can help guide you. Our program has no cost to you. And it's important to not try to do this yourself.
Absolutely. So make sure you get in touch with us to get some of those resources, and make sure you look at your estate planning this new year. Thanks for joining us.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.